Hello, everyone. I'm gonna take off my mask for a second. I just want to say hello and welcome and thank you for joining us, everyone, those of you who are in the room and on Zoom. It's so nice to see you all. Hi, Matt. Oh, there's Matt. All right. Great. So my name is Ömer Harmanşah. I'm director of the School of Art and Artistry, and I'm sort of coordinating with my colleague Beate Geisler and Caitlin and Bert, the Anthropocene Lab Working Group, and we've been having these monthly meetings, and which really turned out to be just very engaging in the sense that, like, we're trying to sort of accomplish this mission of the Anthropocene Lab as a place where people come together and sort of really share what's happening on campus, and so share with each other. And so Beate and I had this idea of doing a session on water. And so that's what we're doing today, focusing on water. We have artists to talk about water. We have colleagues from sustainability and the Office of the Sustainability Initiative. So we're going to get started. Hi, Terry. There's Terry. So it was actually, Beate was really the one who kind of really configured and sort of reached out to everyone to kind of do these presentations. So we're going to have a brief presentations. We'll have some to ask some questions as well. So we're going to proceed as well. And we're going to start with Chris, and who has spoken in the previous sessions also. That was really super helpful. But Chris, I'll leave the floor for you to speak from the sustainability initiative. So thank you.
Appreciate it. How is everyone? So when I was up here last time, I gave sort of a broad strokes overview of all of the different things that planning, sustainability, and project management works on. And today I'm excited about the opportunity to talk a little more specifically about our water-based initiatives. As Ömer said, my name is Christopher Anderson, and I'm primarily responsible for UIC's teaching and learning goals around sustainability, but I'm also responsible for our biodiversity and green infrastructure initiatives, which includes some of our water goals. My colleague here, Matt Rundquist, also has some water responsibilities, and so we're going to be tag teaming this a little bit. But just to start, as I talked about last time we met, the university has these 4 or 5 climate commitments about becoming a carbon neutral, net zero water, zero waste, and biodiverse campus, in addition to the 5th goal just being our general teaching and learning goals as part of the university's mission of education. So net zero water, as you may or may not know, is a commitment to using only as much water as falls on our physical footprint in the form of rain or snow, and not exceeding the capacity of this land to reproduce the water that we're using. So a bit of context. The footprint that we're measuring is 250 acres of the main campus here between east and west sides at UIC. And annually we get about 254 million gallons of water, either through snow or rain. Currently, UIC uses about 660 million gallons of water. So we are far exceeding almost 3 times as much water. So we've got work to do in order to reach this climate commitment. In order to achieve that commitment, we have several goals that are outlined in our Climate Action Implementation Plan, or CAPE, and these are in the 4th strategy related to natural resources. The first of which is our Green Stormwater Infrastructure Plan. There's a published plan that the university has produced about how we're going to manage our stormwater runoffs. We have done GIS mapping of the university and identified areas that are specifically prone to flooding. Here on the east side, it's a little bit better. There are two acute areas that you might have noticed walking around outside on Halsted at Polk Street, in between the Student Center East and the Student Recreational Facility. We get a lot of flooding there. We also get flooding on Union Avenue east of the greenhouse. It is, however, much worse on the west side. Polk Street in particular gets a lot of flooding during a heavy precipitation event. Also on Wolcott, Taylor, and Wood Streets. So right around the hospital, which as you know is a environmental justice issue, because we do have a lot of community members coming in as patients who then have to deal with adverse infrastructure over there. So the name of the game for mitigating those is retaining, catching the rainwater in catchment areas and then releasing it more slowly into the earth. What happens is the runoff goes into the city's sewer system, and that's when it starts backing up, overflowing into basements. We also have a commitment as part of our resilience planning to identify the buildings on campus that are especially prone to flooding. Part of the problem is that all of our electrical and mechanical services in the buildings, they're all in the basements. And so as we try and become a more climate resilient campus, we need to identify which buildings are more prone to flooding so that we can prioritize those sort of mitigation activities. But in order to slow down and divert rain from the sewer system, there are a couple different strategies we use, and many of which are on display out here. This at the Behavioral Science Building is an example of a sustainability fee funded project that has several of the features that I'm going to describe, including installing rain gardens, which are gardens of usually native flora. And the reason for that is the tap roots of prairie plants and plants that are indigenous to this area take up water more efficiently than the shallow roots of the ornamental varieties of plants. So drawing up water out of the ground is one way to keep it from getting into the sewers. But in the rain gardens, there's also a catchment basin underneath the garden where the water will seep into there and be directed into a cistern that will then release it gradually over time after the event has passed, so that we don't overwhelm the sewers and send that water right into our neighbors' basements. There are also bioswales around campus in the landscaping outside of the buildings that are intentionally left with more native plants in order to provide opportunities for that take up as well. There's permeable pavement is another strategy that we use around campus to allow the rainwater to seep into the ground underneath the paving stones rather than running off concrete right into the streets and then into the sewers. Some other examples besides this here at the Behavioral Science Building of places where we have a lot of these strategies in one place are Arthington Mall over on the west side, which was recently certified as a CITES certification, which CITES may or may not be familiar with. It is like the LEED system for outdoor landscaping. So it's ranked on a scale, and it goes from a certified site to silver, gold, and platinum sites based on performance with regards to these sort of things. Arthington Mall is a great example of this. The Behavioral Science Building, the Polk Street Residence Hall is going to be getting a new rain garden as well. That's over on the west side. And the Memorial Grove has several of these features, but we're hoping to enhance that as potentially another CITES certified site, depending on a grant we're pursuing with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So we're looking at doing that as well. Finally, the third strategy of Cape 4 concerns our tree care plan. We have about 3,678 trees on campus that, among a variety of different ecosystem services that these trees provide, one of which is that they take up water, like I said, like the native plants do. The trees on campus divert about 70,830 cubic feet of water per year, with an estimated economic benefit of almost $5,000 a year. And that's just with water retention. There's also carbon sequestration, pollen and air pollutant mitigation. So these trees are fantastic. And UIC was recently recognized as a level 2 arboretum. So we're working on sharing that good news with the community as well. Before I hand it over to Matt to talk about water conservation efforts, are there any questions about the green infrastructure planning? I'm happy to come back up after Matt speaks as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious with the new plaza over at the learning centers. It looks like just grass.
The turf grass
Yeah.
in the quad?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is turf grass. Yep. There will be some limited retention. I mean, more than concrete, but yeah, I think the primary goal of that design was to have a recreational space. So I don't know if ecosystem services was the top priority of that design. Any other questions?
The arboretum certification and all that's gone in to, there's the mapping and labeling of all the trees on the campus. Have you had like much class involvement with that material?
Not quite yet. I mean, that's certainly a goal of the initiative. Right now, the stage that we're at is we have a museum studies student, grad student intern who's working on developing a plan for the best way to share out that news. So she is currently identifying which trees would be the most interesting for, all of the trees are tagged. You can go and plug in the number into Arborscope is the tool that we use. And so through the sustainability website, you can access Arborscope, plug in a tree and get great information about any specific tree on campus in terms of what the arborists have estimated its economic value, what's its environmental services. All that information is on there, but that can be a little overwhelming, right? When you're talking about 3,600 trees. So we're trying to identify the most engaging examples to draw people into that conversation. Yeah.
I'm from California, and so when I moved here 6 years ago, I couldn't get my head around having a lot of water, like we could flush every time. And, I was like, oh, because it's the lakes right there. We were talking about only net zero is from precipitation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what is the problem with getting water from the lake? How is that harming the ecology of the area?
The more, I mean, as populations grow, the more we draw on these freshwater sources, the less sustainable it is. I mean, the water, as we've seen in the American West, water levels continue to deplete as people draw on them unsustainably.
So that could happen.
It could, I mean, hypothetically, but certainly, I mean, not in the near term. I mean, not to the degree that we've seen, but with climate change and, I mean, who's to say? So. Yeah.
Building like on campus, I off here, so they have like a green roof or something like, because like this the concrete aspect of the UIC campus and the privilege architecture really needs itself to be desired in the lower march. Are there any buildings?
There are some green gardens on BSB. I don't think we have a larger green roof. I mean, like a complete green roof. But yeah, maybe biodiversity would be another exciting theme for these sort of conversations. But I mean, the benefits of a green roof are multiple, right? Like you get energy conservation benefits, you get water retention benefits, you get biodiversity. So I would certainly be interested in talking about that more. Do you mind if I hand it over to Matt at this point? Sure. Yeah, my colleague Matt Rundquist is our new carbon neutral program director. He is also a data analyst specialist and is helping with some of our water conservation goals. Should I pin?
Cool. Thanks, Chris, for the introduction. Can everyone in the room hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Matt. I'm, like Chris said, the brand new carbon neutral program director. I think it's interesting that I'm here talking about water, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is. So our net zero water initiatives also include our conservation efforts or water conservation efforts within buildings. That's really because water use is a utility. And when we broke down our Chancellor's Committee on Sustainability and Energy, we decided it made the most sense to have utilities fall all within the same subcommittee. So that is the subcommittee for which I'm the liaison to. So it is an interesting decision, and I think it really highlights one of the things about water is that it crosses all of these lines and these artificial silos that we've put up. So water is an energy use. Energy is also one of the largest users of water on campus. And we treat it like a utility. I think we want to blur these lines a little bit more. We want to, rather than just treating water as a utility that comes out of the pipe from the Chicago Department of Water, we also want to see that rainwater being a source that we're using, which is just going to make Chris's and my jobs a little bit more complicated and overlappy, but that's the beauty of sustainability, I think. So the two goals that we have that fall under this sort of water as a utility are replacing low flow fixtures or old fixtures with low flow fixtures. So we do have an annual goal to replace 157 toilets, 60 urinals, and 134 sinks. Really what that comes from is a project that students had done to count all of those fixtures and then break down what that could, what it would take to replace them over 10 years. The students were involved with auditing and measuring the water flow in those fixtures in a number of bathrooms, not every bathroom, unfortunately, and this was conducted in 2015. So I think that's a real opportunity to update that most recent water audit. So currently we have this project is in the contracting phase. So we have a project manager working to find a contractor, most likely two contractors. We've identified two buildings, the medical tower west on West Campus and I'm sorry, I don't want to spread fake news here. I can't remember which one we chose on the East Campus, but there is another building on the East Campus that's been selected for this first round of funding. And what we're going to do this year is calculate how much that costs so that we can come back next year with a better idea of how many fixtures we can propose with the budget that's provided. The second goal under this category is to replace building water meters with smart meters. And I think this is a really exciting one for providing new data around how our campus is using water at the building level. The goal is to replace 14 buildings with smart meters annually. I don't have great news to report here. We haven't replaced any buildings with smart meters yet. I think the pandemic was a real challenge for our Utilities and Energy Services department who's managing this project. But once it is implemented, we should be able to provide and share some really interesting and granular data about our water use over time. A smart meter, for people who aren't familiar, is a meter that is able to be read remotely so that we can start recording and ideally logging that data over time. This is a really exciting one that hopefully we'll have some progress to report pretty soon. And I could see there being some potential faculty and student and research opportunities involved with this one as well. Well, and thank you. It was really nice to be invited to this. I'm hoping to make the next one of these as well. And happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any more questions for PSPM before we? All right, well, thank you so much. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Matt. This was really super helpful, and also just I think it's really great to start with the sort of what's happening on campus with water. Is I think is just really exciting. I want to invite now our colleague Rachelle Tschor from she's my colleague from the School of Theater and Music. Rachelle is going to tell us about the global water dance. Is that correct, Rachelle? Rachelle, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah. Just give me a second to turn everything on. Okay, yeah, all right, I think I've got everything that we need. Okay. Hi everybody, can you see me?
Yes,
let me get
we
the
can
light
see.
on. I see that I'm dark. Okay, the light on. Is that better? Yeah, I just want to apologize that I'm not there in person. I had a minor head injury yesterday and I've got a bit of a concussion, so I'm gonna be brief and then I'll listen. And if I'm slow, it's just because of that. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to share now. Are you able to?
Great. Yeah, I'm gonna start with this. And let me see if I can you all see that? Is that big enough for you? Do I need to like put it on the slideshow version?
Yeah, that would be great if you could put it on a
okay,
slideshow.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see, slideshow.
Awesome.
There you go. I can see you and the slide. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm not in the right slide, so let me just figure out how to do that. Sorry. I had it pulled up to the right slide, but when I started there we go. Okay, can everybody see the global water dances slide?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
So this is an international project where people all over the world every 2 years create a local site-specific performance about their local water issues and also join together in a shared movement and dance that takes place all over the world. And if you're interested in seeing global water dances from around the world, you can go to globalwaterdances.org and see that. Here at UIC, a group of us are creating our local global water dance. So there's 2 faculty from theater and 7 people from curriculum and instruction, 4 co-PIs, I think, and graduate students. And then at CPS, at Chicago Public Schools, we have 5 teachers and a teaching artist who are going to be creating their global dances as well. The creation of global water dances at UIC is supported by a UIC Award for Creative Activity, and we also have support from the sustainability, and I don't know what the right noun is. I think it used to maybe be called office, but I don't know. Programming, I don't know what the right noun is there. So we, which has supported us through a teaching sustainability initiative to create a course housing the creation of our global water dance at UIC, and also providing us with sustainability interns. Let's see if I can get to the next slide. So global water dances, you can read this. Yeah, and it's taking place all over the world this year in June, and the dances are posted on a website. And I'll just let you read, because you can probably read faster than I can talk today. Is it time for me to go to the next slide? Someone will tell me when you're ready.
Sure,
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me go to the next slide. Oops, hold on. So we're using art to inspire people, the people who are creating the dances, to learn about and communicate about and feel agency in connection to water sustainability issues that are local. And there's one part that is choreographed locally. And there's a part that's like a flash mob that everybody can take part in. And let's see. So these are the sections of the performance. And there's a global dance that people all over the world are sharing, as well as one that's created locally. And then there's a participatory dance, and oftentimes there are more education and more community-based organizations that can take part in the event, so that it can be really a galvanizing force. These are the people who are involved here. So in theater, it's Professor Stephanie Kluggish and myself. In curriculum and instruction, it's Dr. Maria Varelis and Professors Nate Phillips and Rebecca Woodard. And then we have a postdoc, Rebecca Kotler. And then we've got some amazing graduate students, Amanda Diaz and Ronan Rock. And yeah, and so let me go on. And we've got these amazing teachers in Chicago Public Schools. How did our group come together? It started in curriculum and instruction with embodied enactments of science. Then we got we were funded by the National Science Foundation, and which also funded our teachers and our teaching artists to do embodiment and enactment in school around social justice and environmental justice and science learning. And then we were funded by a UI presidential initiative to create environmental justice and social justice performances with students in Chicago Public Schools. And our current project is supported by the UIC Creative Activities and a teaching sustainability initiative. Yeah, I think that might be my last slide. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And I want to ask your help in just exit this PowerPoint. Good. Can you see the flyer for the teaching sustainability? Let me see if I can make that a little bit smaller so that you can see
Oh yeah,
the flyer. Yeah, does that work? Great. So here at UIC, we'll be housing our creation of our global water dance through a teaching sustainability supported course. And if I could ask your help in inviting students who want to make sustainability art together to consider enrolling in this course. There's a 3-credit class on Wednesday nights where we'll do a lot of the creating. And then we have rehearsal time and space on Thursday evenings for anybody who only wants to perform. They want to come learn the dance. They want to make music. They want to do publicity for us, really any way that they want to be involved. So that's it. I can answer questions now, but if you would be able to share this, there was a glitch over at CATA where the courses were listed as restricted for the first few weeks of registration, but we fixed that. And so I have a bit of a concern that people who tried to enroll weren't able to. Okay, yeah. Should I stop sharing now?
Sure, that would be nice. Thank you so much, Rachelle. And thank
Any
you.
questions?
Yeah, I just was going to say that we, if you'd like to share with us that flyer for the course, we're happy to circulate it through the Anthropocene Lab
Oh, that would be
network.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. And if you're in your last classes, if you could make the announcement that we would love to have anybody who wants to come dance with us or design or write or do research about our local water issues or anything, really any way they want to participate would be amazing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to go off camera now and just listen.
All right.
You can probably hear I'm thinking really slowly still today. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Rachelle, either from the room or from the Zoom room? Is there any questions I might ask you to come up here? Because I don't think we can hear you from over there. Perry, do you want to come up here?
So my question is really not so much
Get a camera.
about the dancing is that so where I do field work, there's all these rain prayers, and there's these prayers and they're always in particular places, and everywhere I've been has a place, and they frequently actually have interesting archaeological things that show that they were significant places in the past. And it's hard to get to them, and this very place-based, but these are all for drought situations, like when you want, I've never heard of a rain prayer for like flooding or pollution or anything, these Anthropocene kind of problems. And so what I was thinking of this kind of how what you're doing or with this global water dances is doing something else, but how it might come back and reflect upon all these other traditional ways of responding to water crises.
Wow, that's amazing. If you have any, if you want to do a booth or a table or anything where we can teach people about that. I know that the different water dances, if I were to share the flyer again, the band at the top, that's from Durban, South Africa, my colleagues there. And their dance was about boiling water to make it safe to drink, because there are places nearby that don't have safe drinking water. And so they went out around the countryside with their dance. They would do it by the side of the road, by gas stations and things like that, where people were stopping by to get people's attention and bring them into conversations about boiling water. And the school children became the experts about the issue, teaching the adults in the different communities. So I think there's a lot of different local issues that people have. But yeah, anybody who wants to get involved in any way, like, you know, if you want to come set up around the event, you know, and share your knowledge, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Rachelle. This was really exciting, and yeah, thank you so much. I know you had a difficult day, so even in these conditions, you agreed to sort of come talk to us. So thank you so much. Thank you. I am going to unpin you, so feel better, please. So I want to next. Oh, I saw a hand. Was there a question on the Zoom?
Yeah, but I think, did she leave, or it's okay if she left?
I think she's still here. Lilu, do you want to ask your question? Yeah.
I'm here.
Oh
still.
yeah, sorry, you turned off your video and I was like, oh no, you're gone. Yeah, I just had a quick question. My name is Lilu. I'm a senior art student. I was wondering if this dance program, if it would also be accessible for people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I've been learning a lot from the Disability Culture Center and my colleague there, Dr. Margaret Fink. We just completed a project on making inclusive theater. And I am very excited and eager to have art making and participation in art be accessible to everyone. So I would really welcome that type of thinking and awareness. Yeah, as we go forward. And the beautiful thing about the the Global Water Dances were initiated by the Laban Bartenieff Institute of Movement Studies with a movement analysis system that isn't ability-based. So, you know, if it says to move very slowly, so give me a second. So if the Global Water Dance is something like the water goes up and the rains come down, the water, I'm not going to move my head for this one, the water comes in and the water goes out. That can be done with a finger or a nose or just by eye movement, right? It doesn't have to even be with your hands. So the Global Water Dance itself can be with any movement that anyone can do. Yeah, thank you. It's such a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachelle. Now I would like to invite my colleague Rachel Havelock, who's a professor in English, and Rachel and Beate and I have been collaborating for a long while, and Rachel is going to tell us about the Freshwater Lab, and really the big highlight for me for our collaboration, many years of collaboration, has been the festival that we organized in Chicago just last year, which was really it's been a year already, so it's quite amazing. So Rachel, would you like to yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Rachelle, I hope you're feeling better. I'll have my disclaimer. I've spent the past month in the hospital with my mom, so I couldn't be happier to be here because, like, you know, nothing like sharpening one's sense of purpose than, you know, being in the hospital and thinking about those things. And I don't have a PowerPoint or anything, but we'll just speak briefly about a few things. I am the founder and the director of the UIC Freshwater Lab, and the lab's three main premises are to keep fresh water here, meaning in the Great Lakes watershed, right? That all this water be here for the benefit of existing communities and new arrivals, whether those are humans or other kinds of species. So keeping water here in the watershed, keeping water public, so staving off the privatization of water. I like to think, although water is always in some part, or not always, but in the 20th and 21st century, even a bit at the 19th, somewhat privatized, water does have a really powerful status as something which, depending on your viewpoint, is either ownerless or constitutes a commons, right? Something that belongs to current residents, future generations, and other members of the ecosystem. So keeping water here, public, and accessible, by which we mean, right, that people can enjoy, right, beaches and the serenity and all the other kind of philosophical, salvific and cultural aspects of water, but also that people can afford their water bills and have the ability to have accessible, clean, safe water in their homes. So keeping water public, or keeping water here, keeping it public, and keeping it accessible are our main pillars. There's a lot of engagement about Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes. I'll just reference that really quickly. We have a digital storytelling site called freshwaterstories.com. It is, my team and I created it by circling Lake Michigan. If anyone's seen Station 11, right? If anyone saw that on HBO, I was kind of like, it was like that, but pre-pandemic. We circled Lake Michigan and had a number of community research sessions. It's a multi-author digital site that's also got a little curriculum. So if you're ever with students or with a group of people, it's called Source Path People. And it's just a series of questions to help orient people in terms of their watershed, right? To kind of create that geographical thinking, as well as those social bonds that emerge from sharing a water source with people, right? I mean, I could go on and on about this, but I won't. But of course, in a moment of acute, often racialized nationalism, such as we find ourselves in many other places in the world, I find that this watershed thinking can really be transformative, that you think of yourself in relation to a body of water and interconnected to all those other species and others who draw from that same water source. And that's, again, I'll bracket it, but that is also really emerged from my early research was in Israel and Palestine and Jordan. So that power of thinking of yourself as an inhabitant of a watershed, you know, rather than an enfranchised or disenfranchised member of a country, I think can be really powerful. But of late, the Freshwater Lab has been very Chicago River focused. I always wonder, this is probably the right group. Maybe we can all have a longer engagement at some point. You know, it's both a river, a canal, a waterway system, right? There's so many forms, and naming the thing is no easy business. So currently Freshwater Lab has 3 big projects focused on Chicago area waterway system, we'll call it. And it's very interdisciplinary in nature. I'm a humanist. The Freshwater Lab is humanities based. These are the methods on which we rely, but the projects dealing with this river system waterway are quite interdisciplinary. So the first one is another digital storytelling site. It's called the backwardriver.org. We're currently doing a 2.0. So we're doing an overhaul of that. And it's called the Backward River because the Chicago is the world's only river engineered to flow backward. And right, there's all kinds of incongruities in here of a river that once flowed into Lake Michigan, now diverts Lake Michigan water. And I always say, right, pulls life out of Lake Michigan and creates a zone of death in the Gulf of Mexico. we can go into those details, but there's the basic geography and dichotomy. And so the backwardriver.org has some, revisionist historical narrative, looking at engineering with a critical eye, and also an artistic element, which primarily was created by two students in the freshwater lab, Anish Taylor and Tristan Ortiz. And Tristan, who is graduating UIC this semester, and let's all cross our fingers for the film school acceptance. Tristan took the 5 branches of the Chicago River and the ideas of environmental personhood and turned the 5 branches into characters, for which he wrote a script. And with Anish Taylor as his co-producer, worked with, in the heart of the pandemic, English and Spanish language actors so that the river speaks to you. And so I really invite everyone to kind of dive into that and let us know what you think. And then as Omer mentioned, Beate and Omer and Ralph and a few colleagues at Springfield campus, we have U of I presidential initiative grants to try to activate that sense of being an inhabitant of a watershed by doing these public festivals in the state of Illinois. So our big one, the Backward River Festival, was October 2021. There's going to be something I'll tell you about in a moment along that same part of the canal in May 2023. And we are hoping, and I'd love to get people in this group involved in all kinds of ways, both in the May event and a summer event that we hope to do with our Springfield partners at a really, really interesting place on the Illinois River called Emequon. And, on the one hand, this is the part of Illinois where the Illinois River really, really looks like an oil pipeline. I mean, we are talking, refineries and barges and, a lot of movement of petroleum. But Emequon itself is also the site of indigenous mounds and archaeological sites, about this river juncture. So it's really interesting place historically and archaeologically. And it's also a place where the Nature Conservancy restored the floodplain. So you're kind of going through this petroleum landscape of central Illinois. And then Emequon is this kind of amazing, unusual, very Anthropocenic kind of interruption. So we are waiting for Emequon to get a new director, but I think it would be great for the Anthropocene Lab, for all of us to maybe engage with this and do our thing down in other parts of the state. And then I'll just say 2 other projects kind of briefly that all stem out of this. So as a result of the Backward River Festival, the Freshwater Lab received an Earth Art Grant. And so we are now engaging with another Anthropocenic landscape very close to here called the Canal Port River Walk. You can see the Damon silos from there. If you don't know what they are and you don't know about their sale to a dirty industrialist by the state of Illinois, we can talk in the Q&A, but this is a real clash in very contemporary terms are going on at this site. It's also directly across from a metal shredder, Sims Metal, which is always operating not in compliance with its EPA permit. And so members of the Pilsen community, Freshwater Lab, Star, Citlali Trujillo, in their number are really waging this community-based struggle with Sims Metal around air quality and to be in compliance. And right across the canal from Sims Metal is this weird Canal Port River Walk. So much to say about it. But we are working with 2 public artists, Delilah Salgado and Cynthia Weiss, to install a permanent artwork at Canal Port River Walk as a way of both activating and activizing that site. And so we are likely to be doing a kind of a launch festival in May there. And so, yeah, lots to say about that site as well. Finally, big Freshwater Lab project is not strictly humanistic or artistic, but we're working with a team that includes urban planners and engineers and environmental economists. And of course, part of why the Chicago River runs backwards is to offshore the waste of the metropolis and visit it upon the south. Now, meanwhile, while 122 years of offshoring our waste, meanwhile, in counties surrounding Chicago, technically outside the Great Lakes Basin, they are experiencing groundwater crisis. This is the Cambrian Ordovician Aquifer, which is already tapped in places. In some places might last a few more years, 2030, 2050. I mean, these are all pressing numbers. And the community's long-term plan is simply to ask Chicago for water. That is in play, at least an agreement is, to sell water to Joliet from Lake Michigan. And so our team is doing the policy ground and engineering economic groundwork to think about dual pipelines to these communities in crisis, such that communities that receive water from the city of Chicago or Lake Michigan would have their domestic healthcare food needs met by treated Lake Michigan water, but their industrial needs met by recycled water from Chicago land wastewater plants. And so, the short of it, if I'm going to put it bluntly and directly, is that, Joliet's biggest water user is an ExxonMobil tar sands plant. Next is I think it's called PQ Chemicals, a petrochemical plant. The so-called logistics industry is expanding there like crazy, Target and Amazon warehouses. We think that people deserve water. And that if there's any, capacity for City on the Lakes to provide people with water, then that's absolutely a necessity and a humanitarian burden. But we do not think that corporations are people, especially ones who need fresh water. So this is a water recycling plan, both to kind of increase the total amount of water while making sure that we are not in a time of such uneven water geography, giving some of the world's best water to the dirtiest industries. So, there's the big kind of policy intervention, but of course, these public events and the art, I mean, it's all of a piece, really, at least in my own head. So thanks so much. Yeah, Perry, I guess I can repeat the question if you, so everyone,
Sure.
yeah.
So I know the events that you do and all this stuff, but do you do anything in Springfield? I'm curious about that.
Oh, yeah. So Perry's asking about doing things in Springfield. So we have, we've got our cool partners in Springfield, and they've got a good name for their initiative that I'm not remembering. And so they, as part of our kind of statewide presidential grant, they had a booth at the Springfield Harvest Festival, which was in October. Yeah, we didn't make it down because, anyway, a little up and down, somehow different cities. But so that happened. And then, of course, that's my phone. And then we are going to be reliant on them for the Emiquon piece. Yeah. Sorry about my phone. Of course, it's always that way.
I'm curious, what's entailed in treating water for industrial use? What does Exxon say about it? Have they done that before? This is on the horizon. That's questions that have come up over and over again.
Yeah. So, okay. It depends who you ask. So according to the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, right, according to our, elected wastewater district, their effluent, what they release from their plants, is already good enough for industrial uses. So from their perspective, they're ready to go. Now, we have got a public health person on our team who's kind of seeing, testing that. premise, but right. But so basically MWRD thinks we've got water that's ready to go. Maybe for certain kinds of industrial applications, maybe they need their own filtration systems, but right, that could be a cost borne by them and not by the public. So that's one way to think about it. Another way to think about it, and this is a mixed bag, but it's interesting. So there is a working water recycling plan in El Segundo, California. And it came into being because of a violation of the Clean Water Act into the protected Santa Monica Bay by wastewater. So they kind of had to do it. The EPA forced their hand. So they decided to do like a full water recycling plant, and it's actually our closest model, and to provide that water, because other parts of the country and the world will take wastewater and inject it back into aquifers, or some parts of the world will even use it for agriculture. We'll get to the drinking in a minute. Don't worry, no one in this part of the world has to drink this. So in El Segundo, I forget which company it is, but the refinery and some of the other industries actually contributed to the capital costs. Now it's good because they shouldered, the infrastructural costs of their own water, but like there could be a scenario where there's insufficient water for people around the LA area and the refinery would still run, so, I mean, it's a mixed bag. There in the US, the first pipe to pipe water recycling plant is going to open in El Paso, Texas. And what they mean by pipe to pipe is that they're going to take the wastewater and treat it to drinking water level. And they're going to drink it. And that's what also occurs in Malaysia, right? I mean, so there are these places that are using it for drinking water. Now, my own feeling about water recycling in our part of the world, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District has 7 plants. So if you ask me, we have the potential for 7 different qualities of water, so that one of those, 2 of those could take it to drinking water quality. God forbid there's an emergency, and we need a backup. And then, they could actually kind of be dedicated according to use. And then you basically determine water quality based on what you're using it for. So, I mean, my understanding is that the industries themselves do not object to it as long as it doesn't cost them more or cost them less. So, there's a way to play with pricing a little bit that we're working on, such to make it. I mean, you could also regulate it. You could also say every pipe that's built from Lake Michigan to an out of basin community has to get 30% of its water from recycling. I mean, so there's different ways, as in these things. You could legislate it, maybe harder than pricing it in that way. But yeah.
Have you looked at kind of, you're talking about fit for use
Yeah.
treatment. Have you looked at those alternatives and new technologies that are coming out for kind of using alternative water sources? Because I know there's a lot of chemical processes, for example, that need very high quality water. So
Yeah.
we'll get public water and then treat it again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
how to integrate new technology.
Not me. But we do have, actually would maybe be an interesting person to come to this group as well. Our colleague Krishna Reddy, from engineering, is the engineer on, and he's got a really talented grad student who's been on our team. And so she's been looking at the different, not as granular as you're saying, but she's been kind of scoping, the technologies that we might want to recommend, or we might want the MWRD to look at. So not going, sort of like that broader scale of hitting a certain quality, more than fit for use. But it is interesting. I mean, and because a lot of, water reuse is, it can be very decentralized, right? There are these small systems, like we could have one on campus, You know what I mean? We could have a system, we could use it to water that grass that I think they're putting on the quad, or I don't know. You know, so there's the decentralized model, but you know, here's the thing, it's not decentralized where we are. I mean, it's a huge agency, it's a deep tunnel. You know what I mean? We're talking, it's a very centralized system. And, you know, back to like keeping water here and public and accessible, you know, there's revenue in that water. I mean, we're now paying to treat that water like waste, but there's ways, you know, of methane capture. You know, I mean, the water wouldn't be given to industries for free, you know, it would bring in revenue. So the idea is like, how do you use the resources, even if they've been historically labeled as waste? And how do you have a closed loop system? So that money starts to feed back into, like the whole thing about infrastructure. There's no money to upgrade it. Well, you know, and again, part of keeping water public means keeping those revenue streams within the operation so that there's ongoing revenue to kind of have really innovative infrastructure and upgrades. You know, I mean, we're all still living with this infrastructure that was, you know, it's either 120 years old or it's 70 years old or it's 50 years old, right? Nothing new has been built since, you know, since Richard Nixon undercut the Clean Water Act by cutting the funding, you know, so it's like, so where's the revenue going to come from? We've seen, you know, the answer of the 80s and 90s was privatization. That fizzled, you know, so this is this kind of like remunicipalizing the revenue kind of idea. Yeah.
I know other types around the world, but just a few in my area, in like what from the temperate rainforest to a more arid region that's pretty industrial. And I was wondering that as part of your work on the pipe, you've done further research on the piping, you know, the piping of the waters, and like where in the world they're doing this kind of water?
Yeah, I love pipes. Like you know, there's like clearly enough people here that also spend their time following pipes. Like, yeah, that's kind of like how I often describe what I do. I'm like following oil pipelines and water pipelines and dreaming of pipelines. Yeah, I mean, the politics of piping, I mean, again, I mean, we're in like a humanistic situation, but you want to look at how power goes. I mean, you know, I mean, so many, like the story of America is the public subsidy of pipes to suburbs that were paid for by people in the city, right? I mean, the whole kind of water allocation that we have has so many social effects. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like any pipe you build is a form of social engineering. And I'm totally with you. It should not be done, you know, without that kind of wider assessment, right? Of how power gets distributed and diffused and denied by the way those pipes go. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole Joliet thing is really interesting. And we're already sending our wastewater to Joliet.
Past Joliet.
Well,
Yeah,
through
yeah.
the sanitary insurance.
Yeah.
But so users aren't allowed to tap that currently for water?
Yeah, okay, so that's a really, really good question, because that's where, right, the canal hits the Des Plaines River, you know, the geography. So apparently, when Joliet was assessing its water crisis, they looked at several alternatives, and the Des Plaines River was rejected as an alternative. And I don't have my notes before me, but I think that was a water quality issue.
Yeah, the Des Plaines is as much a wastewater runoff conduit as the sanitary.
Yeah. So the idea would be, right, the water, you know, either as is, I mean, again, we're still working out the details of our proposal, but right, the water as is, or the water treated to a higher standard, you know, would go, we're calling it the dual pipeline system. Because what we also learned from some water economists is it's harder, like it would be harder to go to BP Whiting, I mean, not in Illinois, but just as an example, and say, all right, you've been on Lake Michigan water, now we want you to switch. What the economists have told me is that you're better off when new infrastructure is being built. So the idea is, okay, here's this deal. They've made the agreement and the amount of water is the span between it. It's either like 25 MCMs or like 90 million. I mean, it's like the range is crazy. So that means there's a lot of room. So the idea is, that there's a second pipeline, same easement, same track. It's just, that's the one for industrial uses. And then that means, right, because Illinois doesn't have unlimited withdrawing power. I mean, that's a whole other story. We're not in the Great Lakes Compact technically, but we are bound by a limit set by the US Supreme Court in 1967. The Joliet deal, we could hit it. And so then what happens to all the other, collar counties when they need water and we don't have any more withdrawal? So this is a way of like creating, pretty much like a wider pie. Yeah. And it's not like, we're already diverting the water, right? There's the easy part of it. We're already sending it out of basin. So that's like a no-brainer, I think, Yeah. All right.
So much. Okay, I'm taking quickly over. Hello, Zoom people. Sorry for being late. So the traffic was horrible. So I would suggest maybe we continue with Dan, continue in the direction of Juliet. And
Yeah, it would be nice to follow up.
yes.
But it's my question, if I open Zoom, how do I screen share?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
If I open, I'm now on the Zoom page. You should share, can I screen share from that? Oh, yeah, I think so.
How do I do that? Or you share it then?
I think I'm doing it. Yeah. There you go. That's me. You've got my message.
That's so advanced.
Okay, then I'm gonna do this. I think I can go.
Do you want to, can you come?
I think I'll come up there for audio. Right?
Yes, please.
But I want to go to view and then I need to plug this into my computer. And all this.
Technology. Super.
Yeah, if you could just help me get that plugged in, that would be great.
There's one over there.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So 15 images in 10 minutes.
You're fine.
Let me demask here. This is great to follow up because I'm going to cross the Indiana border, which is a different world, where the rivers are also reversed. So I'm going to talk about the headwaters of the Grand Calumet River. And just briefly, what got me looking at that was teaching a graduate seminar in the art program that I've taught a couple of times. It was based on the Whole Earth Catalog called Whole Earth Vision. And the second time I taught that course, we focused on back to the land, kind of borrowing from the 60s, back to the land movement. And I basically tracked sites following Lake Michigan along the South Shore and then up into Michigan. I looked at a variety of different land use sites from the industrialization in Gary and Hammond and those areas, toxic waste sites, recovered sites, the dunes, the Indiana dunes, and the intense natural resource there, up into Michigan, where we visited historical sites, and one of the highlights was visiting a new generation pot farm where drug culture is being completely reinvented, and we had a wonderful encounter with a young second generation California pot grower who had turned legal and was welcoming us. He said, for the first time. A month ago, he said, I would not have spoken with you, but regulations just changed, legalizing what he was doing. But so anyway, that was the context, the Whole Earth Catalog. Oops, I have to direct it on here, I think. Here's the Whole Earth Catalog. And just curiously, how many of you guys know what the Whole Earth Catalog is? Okay, less than half. That's why I taught the course. because I think it's an amazing cultural resource out of the 60s, and a lot of ecological ideas were broadly disseminated. You know, so it's a deep resource. For me, it was something I scavenged as an art student from thrift stores. It was not quite that generation, but really influenced by in a variety of different ways. So I've got some clips from Google just to show where we're talking about Gary, Indiana, and the dunes that stretch along here, interrupted by U.S. Steel Gary Works and the other steel. Sorry, the name just slipped out of my head, but a variety of, you know, industry and natural research. What was it?
US Steel?
No, U.S. Steel. Yeah, it's U.S. Steel, but that whole complex. And a fascinating history between the park and the industrialization, the preservation of the dunes as an incredible richness of diversity and really an exceptional natural resource with the intensity of the industrialization. Looking more specifically here, I'm zooming in on U.S. Steel Gary Works here, and Miller Woods, which is the westernmost section of the dunes. And you can kind of see this boundary of the park and kind of track the industrialization, the straight lines, the hard shoreline, and the preserved dune landscape. And this is a pretty interesting hangout point, right here on the beach. Oops, sorry, why did something froze here? Does that work? I guess that works. Okay, yeah, I'll just. So here's a look at the beach toward the steel mill. We were just looking down at it. A national park to the left. Sorry, I don't know quite why I'm glitching here a little bit. And this is right in the vicinity, one of those break walls with U.S. Steel on the left, National Park. I'm sorry, on the right, National Park here on the left. So kind of a remarkable, intense collision of a pocket of remarkable nature and a steel mill, which, you know, is representative of industrialization on a massive scale. It was the largest steel mill in the world when it was built at the turn of the century. Was the basis of Gary, Indiana, as a steel town and a kind of utopian village that rose and fell. But without getting too sidetracked in the many histories that take place at that juncture, you know, my grad seminar, we started exploring that intersection, trying to find the headwaters of the Grand Calumet River. This is a section of the dune swale. As you move away from the lake, you have this dune and swale ecology, which is known for its ecological diversity and richness. The oak savanna, about a 45-minute walk, not even a half-hour walk from the beach in through the Succession Forest. A lot of you guys hopefully know the dunes, or if you don't, put it on your list. The oak savanna is kind of the keystone black oak evolution of that area. It used to broadly cover areas throughout the Midwest and kind of this complex ecosystem of fire-resistant black oak trees and other species that are fire-resistant, and essentially prairie plants. So this kind of curious, very different than deep forestation, the black oak savanna. Growing up in the Midwest, I had very little access to this. I wasn't really aware of the savanna and what a important feature is in this landscape. Part of the U.S. Steel site, so as you walk through the park, if you follow some of the trails, you'll end up in the middle of the factory with very little public access other than maybe hiking down a rail line and kind of going off trail a little bit. But you bump up against this boundary, and we were, you know, an intrepid group of artists trying to figure out, how do we get to this river? You know, we're looking at the Grand Calumet. On the park side, you've got a series of lagoons, beautiful water, never industrialized, slightly upstream because the flow reversed. The Grand Calumet used to join the Little Calumet, come into Marquette Park, the Miller Beach area of eastern section of Gary, but within the city of Gary. And that used to be an outlet in the 1800s and was reversed.
No. You can listen there.
And was reversed along with some of the canal works and the water remanagement in the Chicago and the Illinois side. At some point, it kind of flipped the flow of the Grand Calumet. And now these are the headwater.
All right. Okay.
Going back to our overview, these are the lagoons we're just looking at. This is the second one. There's a little footpath bridge, and then the first one is here. So this is kind of the beginning of the Grand Calumet. But then you'll see it ends right here. And actually, if you follow carefully, the Grand Calumet River, it's flowing along here, quite canalized. And then here, like, just gets curious, what's going on here? And there's a flow from east to west. But at this juncture here, it was shunted underground. And there's no walking access. This is all private, US Steel. There are no roads that go in without encountering gates and guard shacks. And this side, this is both sides of this is US Steel, but from over here, you're at the edge of the national park. And so you can follow the waterway in. And so that's what I did. And this is what you arrive at. This is that end of the second lagoon. And you can see there's a drop here of about 6 feet or so, this kind of funny construct, and the water just drops in, goes underground into a culvert. That's what it looks like as you approach it. This is from the headwaters of the Grand Calumet following the river to where it goes underground. So talking about pipelines and kind of rude treatment of waterways, and it's this collision point. It ended up being kind of a richer goal than I had thought. Like, let's go hunt around and find where this river actually goes. And there on US Steel property, if you climb up on this little structure that shunts the river underground, this little sign is on US Steel property. And if you look around, this is what it looks like. This is what the flow, the natural water flow is intersected by the grounds of the US Steel Gary Works site. And if you go back to the other side, so that's one side is limited right there. If you go back to the other, this is that canal that we were looking at that's heading toward those lagoons. And so you can see it's fenced. We're in a vehicle. There's a guard shack up here that will prevent you going any further, but that's the Grand Calumet. So something about even the access, the distance, like I grew up with a sense of waterways being public access. There always being kind of a place where you could make your way along. But here, that transfer point where it's shunted underground, you have the beautiful, pristine, well, I can't call them pristine, but non-industrialized, quite beautiful lagoons in the context of the dunes. A 5-minute walk from the beaches of Lake Michigan, right at the, it's right at the southernmost point. And when it emerges here, it becomes arguably the most polluted river in America, with, areas of the Grand Calumet apparently have up to like 20 feet of toxic sediment. every checkbox for, water quality degradation, it hits. And even though the Grand Calumet flows through a lot of areas that are in various stages of remediation, it's still almost an unfathomable kind of depot of industrial waste. In fact, Wikipedia still says that it's 90% industrial and sewage effluent, the flow of the river. So after this point of, the lagoons kind of dropping underground, from this point on, it's a brutal landscape and a brutal waterway. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble kind of scrolling that up. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does. Do a 2-finger scroll. How do I just do it in the next? Is there another solution for next? Beata, do you have a?
No, I don't know where you're operating.
I'm on preview.
Oh. Maybe you can go back to the images. Just. Yeah.
Exit.
And then, yeah,
And just select.
Yeah, but is that your last image here? We saw them.
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe it is my last image.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought I dropped the map site in. Then let me back up. I thought I repeated one of these images. But I just want to go back to this one that shows this kind of intersection, because I think in my attraction and continuing interest in this site, a lot has to do with what this kind of intersection means and what this national park in juxtaposition to the US Steel site mean specifically, because it's such an intense juxtaposition, right at the southernmost point of Lake Michigan. It's really a significant kind of site geographically, and everything here is flowing east and west in terms of infrastructure, highways, high power lines, pipelines, just a massive kind of compression around that southern end of the lake, as well as the ecology, all of the dunes and the glacial geological history of that site that has so much compression and so much activation that kind of consideration of lines flowing east-west and lines flowing north-south, and even just a walk from the beach to the beach grasses through this succession forests. Each dune has a different ecosystem. You hear different frogs that once you walk over one dune to the next. There are different species of trees when you cross here to here. Like all these lines of division are really intensified and amplified at this point at the bottom of the lake. So it's just become a place where I've continued to be fascinated with like the depth of this kind of impact of both the history of the industrialization and that natural resource. So after the initial sort of exploratory drifting in a graduate seminar, looking for the headwaters as a kind of not a pretend goal, but a goal because I had once visited canoeing through the little Calumet over here. I had seen a little canal heading east and wondered what was that, and at some point explored on Google, followed it all the way over and saw this as a riverway and got curious about how this works. So anyway, I'll stop with that as a little end of the travelogue. And unscreen share. And any quick questions, but yeah.
Are people in the area really aware of this, kind of what's happening with that river going under?
I think not so much. I mean, there are a lot of people who look at maps, and you can find such a diversity of people down there who are, kind of aware. But I don't think there's something about the significance of that model and that transition point. And again, it's more than just the waterway, but But for example, the oak savanna is dependent on fire, regular burns of fires. And one of the reasons that it's preserved as a significant model of oak savanna is because the train tracks that run through that property throw sparks and create fires. And so the land that US Steel owned prevented development from happening, and it also created regular fires, which supported the habitat, you know, completely unintended consequence of their ownership of the land. But a really interesting kind of example of this complex like cohabitation of the site. And I think there's a lot, you know, in looking and kind of understanding more the complexity of what is, you know, what is this environmental side of the industrial pool, and what is the, you know, the people who are really interested in preserving, you know, they're also looking at industry and residential encroachment, and, you know, a lot of complexities there. So I'm still kind of learning, though, I mean, to your question, how much people know and what kind of awareness there is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, and this might have been implicitly explained by the reference to the whole Earth catalog, but I'm sorry, it's not a reference attached. So, but I'm curious, how this kind of excursion or exploratory objective was integrated into the larger class as a whole, and was there a prompt for students to create artworks around this?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a longer discussion there. The Whole Earth Catalog in brief was kind of a catalog for the counterculture of the 60s, with lots and lots of references of books and how-tos and instructions of, you know, kind of reinventing your life, building your own home, having babies in your house, growing organic food, you know, on and on and on, and kind of a precursor to the internet, right? For a counterculture. It was a holistic catalog of reinventing how you live on Earth. And so the course was just structured by kind of dropping that on the table and saying there are a lot of things in here. Let's, you know, find your interest and let's pursue it and develop projects around it. But as I said, the second time I taught that course, Back to the Land sort of became a subtitle for the course. So that got us, you know, field tripping to begin, and then projects developed, not even specifically around the Calumet River or even the field trips. It kind of went back to, you know, all sorts of counterculture, you know, reinvention of life through. So take a look, you know, I highly recommend do a little search on the publications around Whole Earth Catalog, and yeah, you'll kind of see a structure for an artist seminar there. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions, but I have to say one thing.
If you grew up in a yurt in America, probably your parents were reading it, but do you mean the Whole Earth catalog itself, or what was gross?
No, conditioner recipe.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
So I was like wondering what you thought about going off to the headwaters, because what that is in my mind when I first saw it, I was like, this is colonial. I mean, like, but the explorers, you know, going off to the headwaters of the Nile, and then I'm thinking of what does that mean to be doing that in the one, you know, as opposed to like you know, of course you're counting enclosures, but like going off to the headwaters that is hitting the boundaries with the
Yeah.
edge going through.
I did read Joseph Conrad as a young student, so I do have a little bit, and I grew up, along rivers and as I said, waterways. So it was always a way of exploring place because they were pathways and you could follow them. And canoeing through the industrial waterways of Chicago were a way of seeing Chicago differently and kind of seeing it also a century ago as canals were being, were being constructed and waterways were reconstructed. So, it creates its own kind of map. And if you start following it, I mean, to me, it's a curiosity driven, and, I wouldn't necessarily over colonialize it.
But I mean, thinking of going to the headwaters and finding like
Yeah.
the polluted stream. I mean, that's
Well, it was polluted. I mean, it's polluted in its whole length to actually find like pristine a national park and people living there, and that, the intensity of that juxtaposition was really remarkable. And also the fact that you couldn't get there, but like by van with a group of students, you couldn't get there. You can only look and say, well, it's a quarter mile that way, or it's a half a mile this way, or these guards won't let us through, but it's a quarter mile through the property line. So to me, the question of like, where does this river, what does it look like upstream? All those kinds of questions are pretty natural and a way of just exploring where you live.
Yeah, I was thinking that what I study in the Assyrian kings in the Iron Age in the Middle East, they talk about going to the sources of hydrogen and making offerings. So that's kind of a ritual for them.
Yeah.
In a way to go and find it, because like the whole livelihood of their country is really based on that. And so that I was thinking about that kind of as a symbolic place, which they go and kind of venerate, and they bring, they have sacrifices.
Yeah.
So it was just really
Well, on that particular day, we went to the headwaters, the steel mill, the toxic waste site. Like it was all kind of a itinerary of things, but there was something about like, oh, this, like, what's this going to be? Is this exciting? Is it what is it? And so it was a little moment of exploration that we kept bumping up against it. And I realized, well, it's right here. We just can't see it. And so I stayed curious about it. But there was something about that for, like, here we go, we're getting in a van, where are we going? So, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I think there's also something, I think the urban river people say, you have to have access to things. You have to know it, that you can protect it as well. Otherwise, if you don't have a relationship, you really don't know what to care for in a way, right? I mean, maybe that's also a reason to do that. So I think we should continue, and I'm so happy Lauryn is here. Lauryn Spearing, do I say your name right?
Yeah.
So from urban planning and right?
Civil engineering, but.
Oh, okay. So I thought because Jane referred you.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. Okay. But I'm so happy you're here. Please come and talk to us.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's fun to see this. Okay, so I have slides. Oh, let me actually go back to this. Yeah. Okay. So, hi everyone, I'm Lauryn Spearing and I am brand new to UIC. So I started this semester as an assistant professor. Thanks. It's been great so far. I love it. I love it. And so I moved from Texas, from Austin, Texas. And so I just started in the civil engineering department. And so I want to go over a little bit of kind of my general research as well. So I'm kind of the engineer and I'm going to try to keep it broader than just looking at technical aspects. And a lot of what my research actually focuses on is socio-technical systems. So I try to really bridge the gap between just technical engineering knowledge and social systems. So considering public perceptions, considering organizational knowledge structures, for instance, in utilities. And so the main two areas I look at is infrastructure management during uncertain contexts, so things like the COVID pandemic or disaster displacement. Also, shrinking cities. So mostly in this area, if you look at Gary, right, with industrialization, and now the cities are shrinking. How do you decommission water infrastructure, right? Asking questions like that. And then also socio-technical water challenges. And so really the main goal is to use management approaches to lead to more sustainable, resilient, and equitable services. And so when I say socio-technical systems, and some of y'all may be aware of this, but really it's just considering human, social, and organizational factors in addition to these technical factors that we often use. And so here I really want to point out that systems thinking is a really interesting method to understand the big picture, to really broaden the scope a little bit, right? And look at, for instance, the cascading impacts. It's like what you were talking about, how the fires from the railroad and actually contributing positively to ecology. That's very interesting, right? You can kind of trace that with systems thinking. But it also allows us to really understand the parts a little bit better, right? When we understand our system as a whole, we can zoom in to the parts. And so I'm going to focus on kind of the socio-technical water challenges just based on the topic today. And a couple examples of the work I've done is looking at replacing lead pipelines. A lot of that is a social problem of people being aware that they even have lead service lines going from there into their household. Also, water management during pandemics. Public perceptions towards water services. So a lot of times people prefer not to drink water because it tastes like chlorine. I bet many of you have been in a place where you kind of have some of the tap water and you realize it tastes different and maybe a little bit yellow. You don't want to drink that, right? So understanding these perceptions. And then what I want to zoom in today on is a project that I'm doing in rural Alaska. And so really looking at water access in these kind of extreme conditions. And so in rural Alaska, there's a lot of challenges, right? It is remote communities, sometimes 100 people, 50 people of these indigenous villages. And they're experiencing climate change, right? It's kind of the frontier of climate change with permafrost thawing, as well as water quality changes, right? So there's just a lot going on here. So we wanted to study, why are there such large water infrastructure gaps in rural Alaska and what can be done to fix this? And so in Alaska, there's over 30 unserved communities. And so these are communities where 45% or more homes are not served with in-home systems. And so that's a tap and a flush toilet. So what that means is there's 30 communities in Alaska, right, in the US that are, using honey buckets, right, to use the restroom. So they don't have a toilet and they're hauling water or using rainwater. So because of that, there's really a lot of health issues, as you can imagine. Then also in served communities, there's a lot of challenges with service disruptions, right? So this may be because of a pipe freezing and not being insulated, right? Or a power outage that the heating elements of the pipelines stop working and then the water pipelines freeze up, sometimes for the entire winter. Also, if you can look at this image to the right, this is in one of the communities we worked in Alaska. That's a water tank and they deliver water every week or so. And so it's really hauled from the water treatment plant to the household, and then same with the sewage, right? So it's just a very different type of service than we're used to here in Chicago. And so these issues really lead to things like extreme water conservation, right? So what if you run out of water in your tank, right? The place I was staying, we got really close to because it was a bunch of people from Texas who were not used to conserving water, right? And so we really have to watch water conservation and then water quality issues as well. And so, when we started thinking about this issue, a lot of times we assume that water access in the US should be getting better, right? We think that over time, we would see more communities with access, but that's not really the case in Alaska. And so this initial study we did, we were basically asking the question, where is there a significant decrease in plumbing rates over time? And all of these red areas were what we found to be decreasing. And specifically in one really underserved area in the YK Delta. And so that's where a lot of our site work was, just based on this initial work of, majority of these communities seeing a decrease in plumbing rate were there. So we wanted to ask, why is this happening? And so as I've already kind of talked about, it's a really complex environment in Alaska. You have climate change, you have a lack of funding, a very different financial system, right? So a lot of times the communities don't have a cash economy. So operations, right? How are you paying to operate a water utility? How are you going to buy a new pump, for instance, if you do not have cash flowing into your utility? And also there's a lot of challenges from the human system, things like operator training, or even having an operator to run the system. And so this study, we really looked at kind of, what factors first influence the provision of water. And then taking a systems lens, how do the factors cascade between these 4 systems outlined here? And so we interviewed stakeholders, and this was the results I'm talking about today are from kind of state and regional stakeholders. And then we also interviewed community members kind of later due to the pandemic, but we finally got out there and were able to get some perspectives from, end users and community members. And so the results are a lot of fun maps. So these systems maps are how we really understand the cascading impacts. And so one of the questions we asked was, why are these communities still unserved? And in this figure, this is based from our qualitative analysis. Anything in green is financial, blue is natural, purple is the built system or the technical system, and red is our social system. And so from an initial glance, you can see there's a lot of green next to the unserved communities, right? And so a lot of things really come down to finances, but the finances are impacted by many other factors. And so from this, we were able to say, are there leverage points? What could we change to improve water services? And one of the things we found was that there's a need to increase funding for operations and maintenance of water systems. What we'll do a lot of times is pay a lot of money to put an expensive system in, then not give the community any funding or support during operations and maintenance. And sadly, a lot of communities had a shiny new system that is not used 1 year later, right? So millions of dollars are, not being used. And then we also really focused in on climate change, right? So what are we seeing specifically from climate change that's making it harder to serve communities? And one that I thought was interesting and didn't expect as much was looking specifically at how climate change impacted the water quality. So the permafrost melt and the general climate change, many things in the areas, water source quality also changed. And so then the utilities had to change how they're treating their water, which is a big operational expense. And then that really cascaded to the household. So a lot of households weren't able to pay their water bill, which sometimes could be $300 for a community that's very low income, right? $300 would be a lot for anybody to pay for water, but that's oftentimes a water bill. So a couple other things that we found were just really the need to look at this through an equitable lens, right? A lot of the things and the processes are hurting communities in need and really contributing to systematic inequities we've been seeing in Indigenous communities in rural Alaska. We also saw a lot with a lack of public acceptance of water. So even if there's a system, a lot of communities will still use rainwater catchment. And then also this kind of issue with operator training challenges and that there's a knowledge and service gaps. And so one of the things going forward that I've worked on a project is looking at how to incorporate Indigenous knowledge and local knowledge into water infrastructure operations. So to take advantage of what these communities really know about their environment and their situation and use it in infrastructure operations. So that was a quick summary, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
So on that last point about the Indigenous knowledge,
yeah.
So how autonomous are the Indigenous communities? Like, so what, like I know, a lot around the Great Lakes and they've got, their own department of natural resources, even their own water quality standards. I mean, of course, you can't control like part of a river, right? But so I'm just wondering in the Alaska community, like how much autonomy is can they use in running their own system?
Yep. And so the part that they lose that autonomy on is operator certification. And that's really what has been focused on. So and Alaska actually used to have their own certification and now they don't. So if an operator in Chicago is going for a test, they go for a higher level. But then Alaska, they're using the same materials just at a little bit of a lower level. So what's the issue is I mean, one thing is language. The test is offered in English, which is not the first language of many of the people who have an 8th grade education. So like they may know how to work the whole system, but they don't know how to answer multiple choice tests. Right. And so that's one thing we're finding with a big barrier of like actually getting a certified operator. And so there is some form of autonomy in like day-to-day operations though, and like risk and resilience. So mostly with things like adapting to climate change, a lot of utilities have autonomy in terms of working with the community to adjust. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about what's changing in Alaska? How does the water change?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. So there's permafrost thaw, which let me see if so this is a water pipeline. Actually, they can't put them underground because of permafrost, and this is protected for snow machines to go over. But so there's permafrost under, and so it's thawing. And so all of the pipes above and the houses are starting to kind of heave, right? So the ground is heaving. And so that's one of the issues. Another is warming, right? So it is, a lot of people actually talking about the positives in terms of they've seen a reduction in heat cost for the water systems. At the same time, the change in temperatures impacts different water quality in your storage tanks, for instance. And then also erosion is really big in Alaska as well. So the community we looked at wasn't really facing it that much, but especially along the coast, a lot of communities are actually seeing parts of their cities, fall into the ocean. And so that's another thing about relocation.
Erosion connected to climate change?
Yeah.
So permafrost destabilizing soils and
Yeah, so permafrost is pretty widespread, and then erosion there's a couple communities right on the coast that are seeing it from a mix of reasons, which I'm not an expert on all of the why climate change is happening. I'm more looking at the impacts on infrastructure, but yeah.
Yeah, I was interested that it seems as if rainwater catchment was a problem, not a resource in the way you were presenting things.
Yeah. So, and that's a great question. So a lot of the villages we've been working with. So, let me take a step back. One of the big issues is that a lot of systems are built, but they didn't talk to the community first. So these really expensive systems are put in place and then no one uses them. So that is a problem, right? Not the fact that people are using rainwater, but the fact that we put our resources towards a system that no one wanted. And so those are kind of the situations we're studying of, okay, this wasn't the best option. Are decentralized systems better? And so with communities that are not served yet, it's really looking at, okay, we need to first talk to the community, ask what they want, decide if delivered water, piped water, or decentralized services are better. But one of the issues currently with kind of just using rainwater without any filtration is, they're really just putting maybe a sheet over a bucket and then rainwater. And so you're getting all the contaminants from your rooftop going in. And so because of that, there's a lot of health implications in the communities. And so there's multiple ways to look at the issue of, we need better rainwater treatment technologies out in villages if that's what they want to use. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Okay, and then we have the cherry on top. Huda, would you like to come? And with Huda, we're going further away from Illinois. We are entering the Maldives. So thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, so I'm not good with technology, so let's see.
I can try.
Okay, so I have this. Yeah, this is.
That's you?
Yeah.
I think you double click on it.
I know that. Where is the preview?
Can you track it somehow?
Open it. Maybe open it with this. No. I'm sorry. I have a PDF file, but it's.
But you could do it with.
Oh,
this.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Mhm.
Oh, great. Oops.
Do you know PDF? This one? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Can online people see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi. Sorry about that. I forget things, so I have a printout. So this is, I'm not going to talk about the Maldives, but this is like a picture I took this summer, last summer. And this is just for context. Yeah, so this is the capital city, Male, you see, and then there's like somewhere over the Maldives. Yeah. So I'm an MFA second year student here at UIC, and I'm from the Maldives, which is a country of 99% ocean water, and 80% of the country is less than 2 meters above the sea level. So sea level rise is an existential threat to us. So the global sea level is rising 3 to 4 milliliters per year. That means by 2080, we'll be submerged. And this rate is accelerating. So that means it is also a possibility that by 2050, the Maldives will be uninhabitable. So this is, water is, I love water, but water is more than a resource to us. It's like a living body, evolving and transforming. Yeah. We are also surrounded by lagoons, mangroves, and the sea. So these bodies of water feed and protect us. Our roads are water, our edgelands, wastelands are water. Our land is water, except for this one tiny 1%, which is protected by coral reefs. And these coral reefs are in danger because of the sea level rise and the warming of the seas too. So I'm just going to share some of work I've been doing, and then, yeah. Okay. So a key question I'm interested in is, how do we go beyond this thinking of water as a resource, something that exists to serve humans? So how do we begin to think like the watery bodies we are? What if we consider water as something we embody, like the sea inside us, the bodily tides, and the human plumbing? So I hope my work is a way to learn from water than about water. My studio process involves a lot of facilitation, observation, and iteration. And in my work, water is both responding and collaborating too. Repeating, but always differently. It is also a reciprocal process without the need for individual agency. So, let's see. Okay. So this is a work from last year. This is made with ink. I'm using ink to trace water. So this is made out of liquid water, ink, and mulberry paper. So in this work, I'm actually trying to observe the movement of water. And I decided to use mulberry paper after experimenting with a lot of surfaces, because I've found out that mulberry paper can actually hold water for a long time before absorbing into it. So I can actually observe and study water for a long time. So then I'm going to share some of the work I've been doing right now in my studio. And I have something I've written in conjunction with the work. So I'm just going to read it. It will take about 2 to 3 minutes. We have time, right? It's already 6 p.m. From ocean bodies to human bodies, from fish bodies to plant bodies, from fungi bodies to bird bodies, we're all conduits moving through conduits. Water is not a metaphor. Water is a conscious living organism that connects all entities and ecologies. It is the ultimate access point in finding ways to be the we actually are. Water is retentive. This retentiveness and tetherlessness of water can be thought with as ways of knowing how transitational our origin are and is. Humanities says that our bodies are always becoming other bodies, and all we have to do is pay attention to water to believe that we are all bodies of water, and what we do to water, we do to every body, including ourselves. How do we learn from water without reducing water to this universal thing, a human right, a scientific fixation such as H2O? How do we think of water as a living process, a bodily process, a gestational process, a transitional process that makes us, holds us, and carries us? All the water on the planet is all the water that has ever been here. Water is one, but as Linton says, water is also many, and it is what we make it. How can we think with water without abstracting water? How do we learn from water without romanticizing water, without extracting water's agency? How do we think with the specificities of this force as a form of diving deep rather than as a way to substantiate uniqueness? I'm thinking of water relations. I see leaks and molds. I see corrosion and fusion. I taste rust. I feel time. How have you been taught to see water? How do you know water? Water shows traces of all the differences that water has made. Can we think with water without time and movement? What if we think of water as nonlinear events? I'm thinking with water, not as structures, systems, and mechanisms, but as bodies, events, and processes. I collaborate with water. In these collaborations, I'm just a facilitator. So this is the work I'm doing right now. I'm just gonna go slide by slide. This is rust collected from street lights and then collected in test tubes and frozen. So funny what happens when rust is frozen. And this is the same thing. It was during the process and it was after the water disappears. Yeah, I think this is the last slide. These are like water microphones, like listening to water melting. It's not always like, it doesn't always make sounds, but once in a while it makes these cracky sounds. It's really interesting. And the white noise is pretty cool too, yeah. So this is where I am right now. That's it. Thank you. If you have any questions.
I have a question about one of the images that we had for a while. When I looked at it, I thought it was a photograph of sunshine hitting a body of water. So I was wondering how you were catching that sort of ripple effect of a deep body of water on something that I assume is pretty shallow water that you're working with on top of paper. I don't know if that particular image has the ripples in it.
Yeah, I think.
Really felt deep, you know, like that was really showing the absence of the body of water. But yeah, that, you know, I'm seeing like the water and the depth of the water and that. I don't know what you.
You mean absence of water? That's what you say?
Well, actually, not this one, but maybe the next. I don't know what it's been. After that,
This one
just looks like I'm looking at water. Because, you know, this like this deep water. Because water has all these ripples and things. And when water, when light is shining on it from a particular angle, that's what depth. And so I was constantly thinking, because your new work seems to be more about like solid water, but this is your medium is water, but it's not water anymore in the final pieces. But then you're throwing back this one. So, I mean, I was just reading.
I think there's a lot of water in here because these are traces of water.
Traces.
Yeah. So water was there. It's just like we see a trace of. I think water is in my text. It's like it's the same water, always changing, moving through bodies and becoming something, some other body of water. So to me, this feels like a trace of this process, like a transformation of, like, yeah. And yeah, so this effect, I do this by a lot of iteration. So it's not just one layer of water. So in experimenting and studying water in different ways, sometimes different temperatures too, makes a difference too, yeah. So there's a lot of layers in here. And you're right, it reminds me of like when you go diving under a deep body of ocean, yeah, it really reminds me of that, yeah.
Wondering if there's other artworks you're in dialogue with. And I was listening to you, I don't know, people, it was around here, February 2019 at Millennium Park, there were artists that took the recordings of a dying glacier. And they did a symphony around it. I saw a work by another artist, I'm forgetting their name, that was about sort of mold following floods. You know, so I'm like picking up things of other artwork. So I'm wondering if there's other kind of artists of the Anthropocene besides, of course, our own wonderful Beate, that your work is in dialogue with?
I've heard of the Millennium Park Ice, but I was not here. I came here last year. Yeah. But I really enjoy Ronnie Horn's work. Ronnie Horn makes a lot of work about Iceland. Yeah. She was doing a road trip for a longest time in Iceland, and her writings are amazing. Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. So Ronnie Horn, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I know if we have a cold winter, I do that very quickly for.
Yeah, I'm getting ready. Yeah, I'm trying to experiment with squid ink because it's environmentally friendly, so that I can actually use it on, like, in rivers and lakes and with snow too. Yeah.
Can you grow your own squids?
Maybe. Yeah.
That's the next project.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I think for the people on the chat, thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Actually, I mean, I'm so sorry I was so late, but we plan to have a discussion after the presentations, what we all could do together, but it's late already, so I think we're a little bit over time. But I think the idea of this is really to hear what others are doing, and I'm happy to connect people because we can't do that right now. But if something was inspiring for you, or you get an idea of what we all could do 2023, let us know. Yeah, and then we can take it from there. And we definitely want to plan other events 2023, maybe with Freshwater Lab, or so maybe there's an option to connect all these different water perspectives we heard today. And yeah, we are happy to somehow facilitate or support that, right? Yeah. And do you guys have any questions, or no? Yeah, and thank you so much. It was really super interesting as well to hear about Alaska and what you're doing. And I mean, it's so great. UIC has so many different approaches. And often we don't know what, people do. And it's really enlightening to hear about it and to learn about it, I think. Yeah. 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 We're going to invite you again. You have to come now. You signed the contract. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.